What follows is a modest account, drawn in the manner of our present age, of the humble beginnings of the Trikes-RUS Motor Carriage Company, recently established in the industrious and smoke-flecked heart of Cleveland, Ohio, in this last couple of decades of the 19th century. It is the year of our Lord 1885. The world, once content to plod along behind the horse and wagon, now trembles, however faintly, beneath the rattling tread of mechanized ambition. And it is into this din of steam and brass and clumsy invention that our enterprise dares to insert itself. A gathering of 9 souls, 10 being of vulgar excess, bound by grease, grit, and the possibly misguided belief that a future without reins is one worth hurtling toward. Our factory, if one might call it such without offense to the grand mills of Manchester or the rail foundries of Pittsburgh, is a squat affair, wedged between a coal merchant's depot and a dubious sausage concern. Within its timbered walls and beneath its soot-flecked skylights, one may find hammerers, cussers, and crank-turners of various disposition, all bent over the production of our flagship conveyance, the Don't Turn, a marvel of nearly stabilized propulsion. The Don't Turn is a tricycle of singular purpose, inspired, or perhaps haunted, by the German contraption patented by one Herr Benz some 8 years prior. Our model improves upon it by adding neither wheel nor steering advancement, instead focusing on reliability, mild terror, and the comforting clatter of uninsulated components. She is powered by a 1-cylinder spirit-burning engine that, when properly coaxed, emits a whine akin to a frightened whippet and attains speeds sufficient to terrorize chickens and astonish local widows. Steering is, by design, discouraged, thus the name Don't Turn, a motto which we have proudly emblazoned upon our sales pamphlets, letterheads, and the occasional testimonial from a lucky survivor. To the good citizens of this industrious nation, and to any man or woman who hath ever wagered a coin on courage and contraption, let it be known that on the brisk morning of April the 30th, Mr. Phileas J. Trumbuckle, an aspiring gentleman of no known mechanical aptitude and even less good sense, did saddle himself not upon a fine steed, nor into a proper carriage, but astride his newly acquired Don't Turn, the proud flagship of the Trikes-RUS Motor Works. Now, it must be said, the Don't Turn, so named for its tendency to remain perpetually linear in ambition, is a fine example of our burgeoning motor age. 3 wheels, none of which agree with each other. A tiller system of steering, which might as well be a decorative suggestion, and a motor powered by what Mr. Trumbuckle referred to as a miracle of steam, petroleum, and blind hope. Phileas, in a moment of confidence brought on by 2 fingers of questionable brandy and an audience of simple townsfolk, wagered against one Clemency Butterbar, the local blacksmith's daughter, whose horse, Smokestack, was as ornery as it was swift. The terms were clear: a 1/4-mile dash down Millfield Lane, from the livery barn to the broken fence what marks the old Jenkins place. Winner takes a sack of oats or a full tank of kerosene, whichever came more dear that week. At the sound of a pistol, which was not fired intentionally, but as the result of Constable Tillingham tripping over a spittoon, the race commenced. Smokestack shot forward with the grace of a cannonball in Sunday slacks. The Don't Turn, however, did not so much launch as it did shudder, as if contemplating whether forward momentum was philosophically appropriate. After a moment's consideration, it agreed to move, albeit at the pace of a concerned turtle pushing a tea cart. 10 yards in, Mr. Trumbuckle was already reconsidering his life decisions and yelling something about second gear, which to this day remains a theoretical construct in the Don't Turns manual. 20 yards in, the trike had begun a gentle veer not to the left or right, but diagonally into a dry goods stand. Mrs. Penelope Harthridge, who had been selling pickled beets, is still filing the complaint. Meanwhile, Smokestack had returned to the finish line and was snacking on a nearby hat. By the time Trumbuckle reached the fence, his hair wine-slicked, his mustache smoking, and the front wheel wobbling like a drunken philosophy professor, he declared victory due to style points, which no one recognized nor awarded. The Don't Turn gave one final gasp, its valves wheezing like an asthmatic tea kettle caught in a thunderstorm. With a sudden lurch, less a surge of power, and more the desperate thrash of a dying fish, it hurled itself forward, directly into the hindquarters of Chestnut Henry. The horse let out a sound not dissimilar to a tuba falling down a flight of stairs, and was promptly flung sideways into a roadside cabbage cart, which exploded in a flurry of leaves and public outrage. The driver of the cart, whose hearing had been bad for years, assumed war had broken out and immediately surrendered to a passing constable. Chestnut Henry, sadly, was never the same. Local children would recall with awe the sight of a stunned equine limping aimlessly through the marketplace for several days, eyes crossed, hooves uncertain. Eventually, Farmer Bill, seeing no further use in a racehorse who refused to acknowledge the concept of straight lines, sold the beast to the Northern Industrial Adhesive Company, where he lived out his final days, contributing nobly to a line of glue that was, according to packaging, remarkably fast-setting. Trumbuckle, for his part, declared the entire event a roaring success. Took the wind out of the animal, didn't it? He boasted as the Don't Turn belched smoke and caught fire behind him. Man's machine shall always triumph in the end. He was last seen attempting to install a sail on the Don't Turn, declaring it backup propulsion in case of a gas shortage. It has now been 7 full months since the birth of our modest motoring endeavor, Trikes-RUS. And I do confess, dear listener, the glow of industry is dimmed beneath the soot of repetition and rising confusion. Our second assembly station, once hailed as the beacon of efficiency, now resembles a second tavern in a dry county, doubling the commotion, but not the product. The mechanics argue over who affixed which sprocket, and our foreman has taken to drinking his lunch. Cars, or rather Don't Turns, emerge from the line with the same indifference to proper construction, one with 2 pedals, but no steering, another with a horn that whistles hymns. Efficiency, it seems, is but a rumor passed from manager to manager, in whispers and sighs. Worse still, our sales yard is stacked high with unsold Don't Turns, as if the vehicles themselves had staged a quiet rebellion and refused to leave the premises. The clients, ever hesitant, must now be softened with much coffee buckets of the stuff, boiled bitter as regret, and served by our ever-wilting salesman with trembling optimism. Despite the efforts to mask our glut of inventory with price reductions, and I assure you they are now being offered at a price only slightly dearer than coal, the funds for innovation have all but evaporated. We remain shackled to our original designs, polishing brass fittings while dreaming of carburetors we cannot afford to develop. And so, Our days settle into a ceaseless march stocking, building and praying each unit is driven away by someone foolish or far-sighted enough to believe in a future paved with trikes. We toil not for glory nor riches, but to make just enough to keep the lanterns lit and the bolts greased. There is talk of steam-powered competition on the horizon and whispers of an electric wagon. We scoff, of course, just as a man scoffs at a storm he sees too late.